Welcome to the PodoTron Network.
You know, it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, your race, religion, whatever. Chances are that the legacy of HBCUs and their graduates affect more than one aspect of your everyday life. HBCUbiquity.
Yeah. Welcome aboard.
Welcome to another episode of the new HBCUbiquity podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Joyner Jr. Question: how did your alma mater or your favorite HBCU fare during the COVID-19 spring semester? Different colleges and universities, including HBCUs, approached these last few months in different ways and with different results. Different students, no matter where they attended, had different resources and levels of access to distance and or online learning. For today's conversation, we'll talk with Dr. Dwight Fennell, president of Texas College in Tyler, Texas. Now, Texas College, or TC as it's known in East Texas, was founded in 1894 by a group of Christian Methodist Episcopalian ministers. Yeah, another CME school. But the college was formally chartered in 1907 and for over 125 years has continuously upheld its mission and core values of academic excellence, integrity, perseverance, social responsibility, tolerance, and community service. This past spring semester, Texas College had an enrollment of slightly under 1,000 students. Its academic specialties include teacher education, social sciences, and criminal justice. The Texas College Steers, as they're known, compete in many sports including football, basketball, baseball, and golf. Now, incidentally, East Texas is one of those little-known hotspots for HBCUs, for those that don't know. Yeah, within a 100-mile stretch of I-20, you'll find Texas College, Jarvis Christian College, and Wiley College, all right down the line. So, how did private East Texas HBCUs make out during the coronavirus pandemic? Let's find out by talking with Texas College. Sit back, listen, and let's get serious. Welcome to the new HBCUbiquity podcast. Yeah. Welcome back to the new HBCUbiquity podcast. I'm joined now by the president of Texas College, Dr. Dwight Fennell. Good morning, Dr. Fennell, and how's everything in Tyler today?
Good morning. All is well. All things considered, we're doing well.
Now, are you in Tyler right now, or you've been remote accessing from somewhere else?
As a matter of fact, as we speak, I'm on the campus in my conference room on the campus proper. And on occasion, I'll talk more about what we're doing in terms of work schedule, but I'm at the campus currently.
So let's get the most important question out of the way, and that is, how is Texas College doing these days?
Well, let me just share that, and you probably are quite aware as well as the public, that everyone was caught off guard in terms of this pandemic.
Yeah.
And so all things considered, we have been trying to do the best we could with the resources that we have. I dare say that the faculty and staff started out real well. And as a matter of fact, some things were so consequential that it worked well, and that some of the things that we moved to, like online instruction, we'd already started tutorials with our students and our faculty, giving them training. So that was the fairly easy part. I guess the most difficult part, and that continues to be with us, is the emotion that's behind this pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the campus community is all settled, nor the community that surrounds us. But again, those that are with us right now, we have a skeleton staff. We're in good spirits.
Is Tyler considered one of those hot spots like Dallas or Houston?
The numbers in Tyler were escalating with consistency up until last week. The data shows that it's a point of stability, and the counties around us appear to be escalating a little bit faster than Tyler, based on the data that's being shared.
So, Dr. Fennell, what was commencement like for your graduates?
We essentially canceled commencement moving into the school, coming into the season, and that was one of the most difficult decisions that we had to make. And let me just share that all of our campuses approach this from very different perspectives. What we did as the campus notwithstanding, we posted a message from the president and acknowledged them online. And that message and virtual presentation is still online. The other thing is that we work with the other 77 HBCUs throughout the nation to do a celebratory type of recognition of the graduates from the HBCU standpoint. Kevin Hart did a Facebook presentation. President Obama was a part of it, and a number of other celebrities. That happened last Saturday, and it was a 2-hour presentation. And there were 78 HBCU presidents who made presentations of congratulations and commendations to the graduates. And so, again, everyone is doing some things in their own fashion, but that was one of the more solidified ones that we moved to as a HBCU community.
Dr. Fennell, do you have any updates that you can share at this point in time about the upcoming fall semester?
We have been attempting to use the data that's presented to us by the city of Tyler and Smith County to make a determination in terms of what we should do and how we should do it. Understand that we get those reports essentially on a weekly basis. And right now, Smith County appears to be one of perhaps the most stable counties according to the way that the data looks. What concerns me, however, is that our students don't just come from Smith County.
Right. The
surrounding counties are escalating, and in my opinion, at record numbers. Many of our students come from high-risk areas, and that's what we've got to be concerned about. And so what we are having to do, as a matter of fact, the TADC presidents, which are the 5 historically Black institutions in the state of Texas, we're having a collective meeting on next week to talk about strategies that we all can perhaps use. And so we may be looking at such things as pushing back start dates or moving up end dates for the semester. And there may even be some discontinuation of face-to-face instruction until we get a sense of what's coming into the campus. Understand that because of how our campuses were built, and my campus, for example, was built in 1894. And since that time, many of the facilities have not grown to accommodate the types of resourcefulness that's needed now during this pandemic. And so we're still trying to be resourceful and strategic. We are, notwithstanding, in the meantime, doing things like social distancing. We're requiring all our staff to wear masks and when they're in common areas and gloves if necessary. I have my group sanitizing the campus while we're at this point of low in the campus time frame. I'm bringing in a sanitation group to sanitize the entire campus, classrooms, cafeteria, administration buildings, just so that we could be in a ready posture. Our summer school, for example, only started May 18th, which was this week, and we're doing it online. And what's interesting is that many of the students, we have a pretty large group for summer session 1 and summer session 2. But what's also interesting is that we did a survey. We did a survey through a third party called Trellis. And we also did our own survey by having our students to evaluate our processes. And it's quite interesting that a number of students are looking forward to coming back to the campus proper.
Yeah, and that's something that even I'm observing on my end with my younger children. They're not college age, but the structure of structure and social and academic structure of being face to face, it counts for a lot. We really saw that this semester. It's how you learn.
I really believe, and this is just my perception, I believe that this population that's coming from secondary level into higher education will be more ready to do distance education than some of the ones that we currently have. Distance education is somewhat of a new phenomenon for many of us, and many of our students need that face-to-face. They need the embrace and the touch of faculty to see their faces and get the reaction firsthand. But the evaluation showed from our students after evaluating the spring semester that 70% of the students were pleased with the online instruction.
Good.
But 70% is not 100%.
Right.
And so we still are concerned about what happens to that other smaller population.
Dr. Fennell, with regard to the past spring semester, do you anticipate Texas College making any adjustments to the admissions criteria for this coming school year or the next one?
That's something that we've begun discussions about, and I think we're going to have to. We're going to have to give considerations to admissions. Now, understand that we are an open admissions institution. And being open admissions means that we get students from across the gambit with skill set preparation. And our policy kind of accommodates that right now. For example, only if a student comes to us with a marginal grade point average, we allow them to enter the associate degree programs only. And we provide a level of support, advisement, tutorial support, and monitoring around that student base. I think we're going to have to step that up if we continue to move in that same direction. Notwithstanding, I really believe, and this is one of the things that many of our students are saying, they really don't have the technology resources to do the study away from campus as you would think students would have in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Many of them don't have the computer access, they don't have the broadband access, and or sometimes the accommodations at their home where they feel comfortable in an environment to do the type of study that's needed.
So, Dr. Fennell, with that said, let's take a step back for a moment to revisit this past semester. You know, about, I guess that was maybe a little over a month ago, President Trump signed the CARES Act that included a reported $1 billion for HBCUs for COVID-19 relief. So my questions for you are, number one, how much did Texas College receive? How were the funds utilized? And what are the ways that Texas College benefited from the increased funding from the Trump administration, even over the last year or so?
Let me share, and that's a very good question. And let me share a couple of things that I like to wrap around my response to that.
Yeah.
First of all, I think the intent of the funding was with the student body in mind. And I think it was also with the institutions in mind. I think there was some perhaps shortcomings in terms of the distribution of that funding and the perception that embraces the funding. For example, only of the $1 billion plus type of allocations that were made to our institutions, what many individuals don't understand is that we had requisites that we have to fulfill with that. For example, on Texas College, the CARES Act there's one portion of the CARES Act that divides the allocation. So in that portion, we received, for example, only $2.3 million. But one half of that could only go back to students. And so the first thing that we had to do was meet the requisite criteria of identifying the students who were Pell Grant eligible to make sure that they applied for the funding. It wasn't just an automatic distribution.
Wow. Okay.
It was a matter of fact, they had to show that they were Title IV eligible during the past academic year. So students who took courses online, students who took courses part-time, students who were considered to be DACA students, and students who were international students were not allowed to receive any portion of those funding allocations. Now, to that point, we started our distribution of what we call the refunds to those students. And today we have allocated about a little more than $500,000 of the $1.1 million that goes to the students. And this, just a matter of fact, on yesterday, I signed the second allocation of checks. And so we have a little bit of time to make sure that we touch those populations. The other portion of the 2.3 was allowable to be used by the institution for helping students to progress during this pandemic. And so those restrictions essentially meant that we were supposed to be able to identify the way that we could better deliver course instruction and use those dollars for it. So the funding was to go to technology initiatives like computer supports, expanding broadband, making sure that the campus was ready to do online delivery. And if you look at the timing of it, while the funding is very much needed and necessary, at the same time that the funding came in, it doesn't allow us the time to ready ourselves as quickly. So what we're doing right now is using the balance of those fundings to make sure that we can do more with our summer online instruction to help students. So the misnomer is that, these institutions are receiving all of this money, but there are restrictions with it. And some of the restrictions even suggest that we can't advise students that if there's a balance that you have within your financial obligations to the college, we can't make the recommendation, nor can we pull funding to make that happen.
Wow.
So those are some of the nuances that we're feeling, notwithstanding, all in all, I think the allocation itself was with good intent. And we're trying to use it to the best of our benefit in terms of making the institution more accommodating to students' instruction.
Now, were any of your students eligible for the college student stimulus that also passed?
Yes, they are, but we understand we won't know some of that. The intent is that, so for example only, that will go directly to the students from the federal government.
Right.
But associated with that, we also, because essentially we disrupted it's perceived because of the pandemic that we disrupted the semester. So students who lived on campus, for example only, who had a room and board responsibility to the campus, we had to refund those students in many instances as well. And we found that after we made adjustments to some of the accounts, some students got 2 forms of funding from us. Some got one form depending on what their financial status was with the college. If they had a bill, that sort of thing. We made the appropriate adjustment. But those are the nuances that we had to monitor. And then there are these little stipulations that are coming day by day that we're still having to be held accountable for. So, for example, only if you or others wanted to see what our allocation to the students was for the CARES Act, we're required by the Department of Education to make that available online. And it is posted online as a CARES Act report to the general public in terms of what Texas College has and continues to do.
And before all this started, there was another, funding bill passed for HBCUs back in December. Nominated or sponsored by Senators Booker and Harris and others to get additional STEM funding for HBCUs. Was Texas able to benefit from that as well?
We were able to get two stimulus packages, one for considered to be minority serving institution funding. And for us, that was a sizable amount, in the amount of $2.6 million. We have not started to look at to make moves on those dollars amount yet until we make the students whole. And so that will give us a little bit more flexibility, we believe, in terms of ways of establishing instruction. And so as we start to establish instruction, and I'm talking about the readiness of the campus, I think some of the things that individuals don't realize is that college campuses are cities unto themselves.
Right.
And so things like student testing for coronavirus and the PPE types of supplies and support, in my opinion, we need those resources as well, because our students come from all over. And so at a given moment, if a student should prove to be infected on this campus or have some symptoms, we should be able to test. And we have not, the supply chains have been a little slow in terms of getting those supports to us. Although I know, for example, us, we've applied more than 2 months ago just for the thermometers, so that we could make sure that if anyone has high fevers or some form of type of illness, we can do some readiness check through our healthcare area. But those are the things, again, that we're all having to visit in our own ways.
And so with that said, Dr. Fennell, how about with your faculty? How's your faculty your faculty and staff holding out through this, this time?
Well, let me share with you what transpired during the spring semester, and this will give you the perspective.
Okay.
It was tangential that we had already begun preparing for online instruction. As a matter of fact, there were different levels and platforms that we were building throughout the semester. And it was just so consequential that at the point of spring break, for the area of Talos, the stay-in-place order began. And so since spring break, we didn't allow faculty to return, nor students to return. We went almost immediately to online instruction. And so my academic vice president was having weekly meetings with faculty. They established a peer support online for instruction. And it appears that those sorts of things, giving them the tools that they need for the benefit of students, kind of kept their emotional lift up. We did have to furlough some people who were outside of the faculty realm, which was a little bit hard, and it still remained emotional for us.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding, I think the faculty side of the house is doing quite well. And we're trying to make whole those other individuals by seeing where we could utilize their services in other areas. While they may not be in the specific field that they were hired for, we're trying to use their talents in other areas during this period.
And as I'm sure you're aware, Dr. Fennell, that conundrum is going around all of higher education, whether you are Harvard, Morehouse, everybody's dealing with this at the same time. I want to switch gears a little bit now to looking ahead a little bit. Here in Dallas, I've been following for the last several years how as you reestablished your football program and started recruiting from H. Grady Spruce and Sunset High School and A. Maceo Smith. Do you have an update yet as to fall athletics for Texas College?
We know, as a matter of fact, we looked into, we know that we have at least 80 former athletes who planned on returning, and we had at least 40 recruits as of last week. The question that we're having some conversation about, as a matter of fact, we belong to the Sooner Conference Football League that's essentially out of the Oklahoma area. The presidents in that league are supposed to meet on next week by teleconference to talk about the season. One of the things that concerned me is I'm not sure how you social distance with football and sports in general. So I know the Red River Athletic Conference, we met as presidents last week, and some of the concerns by some of the presidents are are we ready to open up our campus to sports during the fall semester? So by July 1, we're expecting a statement to come out from the commission, from the Red River Athletic, the NAIA, area to give their perspective of where they are. And this afternoon, as a matter of fact, I'll be talking with my board of trustee members to share with us what options I think we have. And I think in that regard, I think you can still maintain a football team, but I think you have to do things other than practice football. I think you give them leadership direction and you talk about goals and objectives that they should establish career-wise, just to solidify the continuity of the program. And so we're having those discussions in-house, but at the same time, the definitive plans for what the fall is going to look like are still a bit sketchy.
Yeah. Dr. Fennell, what would you say at this particular point in time are the biggest needs that you see from your perspective for both the campus and your students?
You know, I really believe that the financial support of students was going to continue to be high. And although the stimulus dollars were provided to those students, I'm not sure if it's enough to make them whole. And so I think if there was an appeal to the general public and to others, it would be to make scholarship dollars available for those individuals who prove to be deserving of it. They show that they're making academic progress and making a grade point average within their programs. I also think that giving students the opportunity to, where possible, to look at internships so that they can ready themselves. Now, this pandemic has proven to be quite interesting with the employment sector.
Yeah,
I'm a baby boomer, and I think the students' challenge for the most part is going to be with baby boomers now moving into the workplace, assuming jobs that many of our students would likely have. But notwithstanding, that doesn't mean that students can't move into internships and help some of these businesses as well as help themselves with types of skill sets that are needed. This is going to sound a little bit interesting, perhaps. Many of our students are still displaced. We have a number of students that don't have the type of home environments that they can study in. Even in the 21st century, they don't have the broadband, they don't have the technology. And so the financial and the fiscal support to help make those students, I'll say it whole, or while they're away from the college campus is going to, I think will be helpful to them. But those are just some of the categorical areas that I think is going to affect most immediately the students that are affected by this pandemic.
Dr. Fennell, in closing, you mentioned earlier about the TADC meeting coming up next week with the other member colleges. And for those who are not aware, Texas Association of Development Colleges is a consortium of all 5 private HBCUs in the state of Texas. Ahead of that meeting, are there any updates that you can give regarding the other member colleges about what they're going to be doing next semester?
Well, let me share this. I dare say that I think that the leadership at each of our institutions have the student populations and their campus safety at heart. I do know that when this thing started, at the very forefront, there was communications about social distancing and being very careful about how you engage students with population. See, in our opinion, it's not the number of people that surround us. It's the one person who may be affected that you don't know about. Yeah. And so we need things at our campuses. And so we're talking about what our campus needs are. We need sanitation stations. We need testing types of supports. We need the PPE types of supplies that can come in. And we need to make sure that our faculty feel comfortable and whole while they're in the classroom. And so, again, my campus was built in 1894. The most recent building was in 2016. And some of the renovations have been from 2015 to date. But we didn't make those renovations with pandemic types of especially COVID-19 types of needs in place. So now this summer, we're going to have to look at other things. How do we create, for example, a cafeteria that will accommodate our student population, and likewise the residents are saying. And we're all having those conversations, and we're trying to glean from one another because our resource bases are different as well. And to that point, if I may, Mr. Joyner, I think another thing that would be helpful to our institutions is to establish an emergency relief fund. We have begun one at Texas College, and those individuals who would like to help make a student whole and even support the institutions that they make contributions to an emergency relief fund type of category when they make a donation to our colleges would be quite helpful.
Well, Dr. Fennell, thank you so much for your time and for your candor in these updates today. Best of luck to you and Texas College. As you know, I'm a big Steers fan. Folks cannot see, but you can see I'm wearing my Texas College Go Steers shirt right now.
You look good in it as well.
Scruffy, but good. So take care, Dr. Fennell, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you for this opportunity, and God bless. Stay safe.
This is Thomas Joyner Jr., and you're listening to the new HBCUbiquity. Welcome back to the new HBCUbiquity podcast. You know, from time to time, I'm asked to describe this podcast. My answer usually tends to be something along the lines of constructive conversations with the HBCU community. And with that said, I want to thank Dr. Dwight Fennell for today's constructive and honest conversation. You know, I've known Dr. Fennell since his days as president of Paul Quinn College here in Dallas. And for as long as I've known him, he's always been expected to make miracles happen without having much to work with. And once again, that seems to be the situation for him, as this upcoming semester may be his most challenging one yet. God bless Dr. Fennell and Texas College. You know, it's sad to say, but even as this episode is being recorded, it's still too early to make accurate assumptions about what next semester will look like. On the one hand, you have schools like Purdue University in Indiana that expect a quote-unquote normal fall with students in classrooms and dorms. But on the other hand, the entire University of California system, you know, schools like UCLA, Cal State, and so on, have already announced that they will be completely online this fall. So where does that leave historically Black colleges and universities, especially those whose enrollments and resources don't begin to approach the Purdue's and San Diego States of higher education? We'll continue to monitor, discuss, and update each other in the weeks to come. You know, that's what social media is for. And you can always hit me up on IG to continue discussing this. HBCUbiquity Podcast. That's our IG handle. HBCUbiquity Podcast. One word. HBCUbiquity Podcast. And that's us on Instagram. With that said, thanks for listening, and I hope to talk to you again on next week here on the new HBCUbiquity Podcast. Take care.
Sign up and be a part of the team. Be a PodoTron at PodoTron.com. Thank you for listening to PodoTron.